have a quorum. I'm joined today by Councilmember Ed Reyes and Council President Eric Garcetti. We have several items that I'm optimistic we can go through quickly. With that said, Ms. Barclay, why don't we start out with item 1.
Meg Barclay, CLA. Item 1 is a report from the Community Redevelopment Agency and the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to awarding contracts for construction management services in various redevelopment project areas.
Okay, on item 1, we'll adopt the CLA report. Item 2.
Item 2 is a report from the CRA and the City Administrative Officer relative to renewing insurance coverages and other related insurance costs.
On item 2, we'll adopt the CAO report. Item 3.
Item 3 are reports from the CRA and the CLA relative to environmental action and construction and permanent loan agreement with Lockharinas Senior Apartments LP for the proposed development of Lockharinas Senior Apartments.
Okay, on item 3, we'll adopt the CLA report. Item 4.
Item 4 is a report from the CRA and the CLA and a resolution relative to the acquisition of the Ralph Bunche Peace and Heritage Center.
Item 4 will adopt the CLA report. Item 5.
Item 5 are reports from the CRA and the CLA and relative to a construction and permanent loan agreement with UHC 00317 North Hills LP.
Okay, that's 5. We'll adopt the CLA report. We will continue item 6. That brings us to item 7.
Item 7 is a report from the LAHD and the CAO and a resolution relative to the issuance of tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds for the Academy Hall Apartments project.
Okay, on this item, we'll adopt the CAO report. Item 8.
Item 8 is a report from the LAHD and the CAO relative to releasing a request for proposals for outreach and educational services for the REAP and UMP programs.
Okay, on item 8, we'll adopt the CAO report. That brings us to item 9.
Item 9 is a report from the LAHD and the CAO relative to releasing a request for proposals for the Handiworker and Home Secure programs. We recommend that this item be amended to clarify that the additional 3-month extensions recommended by the CAO be allowed for the months of July, August, and September rather than December.
Okay, then we'll adopt the CAO report as Mr. Garcetti.
Just real quick on that too, can we make sure that we add some language to refer refer to this, but the stimulus or the economic recovery bill, a big piece is going to be the weatherization grants, and this is one of the best ways, I think, because we already have contractors who are out there that can put people to work. So if we can ask the housing department to make sure in the work group that we have together on housing for the recovery package that they let these contractors know about that so that they can begin to ramp up if we're going to be able to get those funds.
Okay, so why don't you just roll that into the amendments, and then on item 9 we'll adopt the CAO report. Item 10, I know we're going to continue the item, but I'll let you read it. And Chuck, you have a card on item 10. I'm going to continue it, but I'm going to afford you the opportunity to speak on it today. So when it comes back,
No speaking.
no speak. Okay.
It might be better speaking now because
That's what my gut told me. So I read item 10, Ms. Barclay, if you would.
Item 10 is a motion of Luis Reyes relative to direct tenant notification of the city's systematic code enforcement program inspections.
Chuck, my dear friend, come forward.
on that, right?
Morning.
Good morning, urban committee members.
Morning.
On the item 10, it says specifically to direct tenant notification, enforcement inspections. Well, something I don't understand, what about homeowners who violate city codes? And what about the people that got housing assistance in this city on all its programs? Don't they get direct notification? Don't they get inspections? They took all the money in that, and I can bring up a good reason why. In the area where I live, inspectors that come out under city programs and contractors, they'll inspect the things. Then you ask them and tell them next door, wow, they don't have a fire thing here, their lighting is not safety, oh, you got to call Sacramento. And I bet I could come up with 100 to 200 violations, and does the city inspect those? No, there's no program for them to do that. They only do it on the basis of if they're contracted by the city to come and inspect something and you take a permit out, they'll inspect it. If not, you can say, how about the guy next door and that? They didn't do it. Call Sacramento. Well, okay. If there's a direct tenant notification of code inspections, then what about the homeowners or the people that participated in all the city housing programs? What about all the violations they may have? And I know they have them. I do know they have them. So maybe they should incorporate into that is tenant, which would appear to be a renter. But what about people that own their homes that went through city housing programs? And what about inspection enforcement of codes and not just for tenants? That's saying, hey, they can come anytime they want and do an inspection. But what about the people that have problems and something burns down and you get nailed for it?
Okay, well, Mr. Garcetti.
The Department of Building and Safety, you just call your council office, ask the Department of Building and Safety to come out, and we inspect all the time home violations. But it's Department of Building and Safety that does it.
I asked the Building and Safety, and they said...
Call your council office. They'll get an inspector out there, trust me. We do it all the time, every day.
But they don't do enough of it.
But I have, Mr. President, I have a bigger concern. Chuck, you said that there are violations and that you know that there are violations.
And I've told you...
Chuck, shh. You cannot go into these people's homes when they're... Don't get in trouble, Chuck. So just call your council office and have them do it.
And it's only if they let you.
They don't let, so you not, anyway, go on, Chuck. And it's good to see you.
We'll deputize you, Chuck.
We'll get some kind of percentage. He'll get 5% for everything he brings in. Hey, Chuck, you know what? I shouldn't have had you sit down. I have one public comment card from you, so if you want to do it right now, you can.
We'll do it.
Again, was public comment from Chuck Tinnen.
President Obama is aggressively leading an assault on fixing the economic crisis, foreclosures, housing, lending, loss of jobs, and he's not backing off in turning his economic rescue packages around and on the road to recovery and his campaign for the people. This city needs to follow in his footsteps in preventing things like gang violence, kids getting shot, loss of jobs, a better accounting and transparency of our departments, such as our transportation department needs to fix our decaying streets. I drive around all the time, especially in my community, holes and bad cracks and bad streets in our neighborhoods. That's bad. Our housing department, as Ed Reyes said, everyone should have a place to live. Right. The housing department needs to get more money to open more development programs that are needed to give people a place to live, to keep people in the homes that they already have but could lose, and more affordable housing that needs it. In my Bank of America, in my neighborhood this last week, I was talking to the manager. 10 families came in crying. They lost their homes, and there's nothing they could do about it. And, you know, it's funny. I see in the Valley in Van Nuys, and I see in Valley Village and other places, I can't believe how many for rent signs there are, more than I've ever seen in my life. What's happening? So I encourage this committee that deals with housing and our city council to follow in Obama's footsteps. He's not backing off, and he's making a very aggressive assault on turning things around for the people. And God bless him for that.
Thank you, Chuck. And we're fortunate to have one of the original Obamaites as the president of the council, so he will take
I'll call
us
him later.
He will take us to the promised land.
I'll call him right there.
Okay, yeah, we're going to recess this committee here, and we're going to let Mr. Garcetti make a phone call. Ms. Barclay, that brings us to item 11. If you could read that item, and if the department people could get ready to come forward.
Item 11 is a motion, Garcetti Smith Parks, relative to tracking, locating, and recording the locations of foreclosed properties and properties entering the foreclosure process.
Okay. Now, Mr. Clerk,
Sir, yes, sir.
who's the maker of this motion?
That would be the council president, sir.
And he is in charge, but don't you find it strange that the individuals that seconded this motion are not members of this committee?
Very strange, sir.
Ms. Barker, oh, no, what about you, Mr. City Attorney?
I concur.
That Brown
Okay.
Act thing, you know?
Bad president, bad president. Okay, good morning.
I'd like to amend this to add the chair, please.
Good morning.
Good morning, Meg Barkley with the CLA's office. In response to the motion, our office hosted a meeting of the named departments in the motion, or departments named in the motion, to discuss this issue and further clarify the parameters of the framework that we'd be working on and developing. So at this time, the group is recommending sort of focusing the ordinance on foreclosed properties as opposed to all vacant properties, establishing a mechanism to register properties foreclosed before the adoption of an ordinance, as well as any properties foreclosed subsequent to adoption of an ordinance, establishing, coming back with a recommendation for appropriate fees and penalties to be, to meet the city's costs of tracking these properties, as well as addressing any nuisance or blight that may result from vacancy, and also determining the appropriate city department to maintain a registry and also to prevent and or respond to that nuisance or blight that may arise. So that's sort of where we're going to be going now. We recommend that the committee hold the motion for 90 days and allow us to come back with more detailed recommendations.
Mr. Garcetti, you want to?
Add anything first?
Hakam Mordezai, Housing Department. Council members, just wanted to clarify something in addition, is that what we were looking at was setting up a foreclosed registry, but then requiring the lenders to notify us either at the time of when they foreclose or whenever and if the property becomes vacant, so that we can then use that to have them complete a trespass authorization that will allow the police department to be able to deal with any squatters and any nuisance that arises from that, to be able to communicate with the Department of Water and Power, both in terms of preserving utilities and also not starting utilities if the building is supposed to be vacant. This registry will also be able to go hand in hand with the NSP program that the Housing Department is working on. And so it has multiple purposes for which it can be used, knowing exactly what are the foreclosed properties and having them be registered by the banks. Also be able to provide information to the tenants if they're still occupying a foreclosed property, so that they're made aware of their rights under both the ordinance that was adopted in December and also under the rent stabilization ordinance, if it applies. Because of course we're talking about not just multifamily properties here, but a large number of single-family homes as well that would be under this registry.
Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and my apology for the oversight. We'll look at the attendance. Maybe it was a day, I don't know what happened there, but we will not have that happen again.
You know what, I just saw Ed, Laura. Chuck, would you look to your left, talk to that handsome gentleman in the glasses about the concerns that you just raised, and I'm sure he can answer any question where it relates to the concern. So maybe you can sit in the back.
Mr. David Laras from Building Safety.
But I will again.
Will again, yes. Sorry, Mr. President.
No problem. And thank you. I want to thank the banks and the realtors who have been a big part of discussing this together. And I think all of us share a common interest on this committee and certainly throughout the city to get our heads around all the foreclosures that we have out there. We've had 18,000 last time we counted since January of 2007. I'm sure that's north of 20,000 by now, since mortgages are resetting this month. And one of the major problems of this is blight. It's in everybody's interest, not just the individual property owners or the renters, because they become eyesores, squatters move in. You're right, Chuck, that, you can't go into closed doors, so building safety inspectors right now won't go in there as the law is written right now, understandably, because oftentimes you'll have squatters behind closed doors. Property values go down, and these become magnets for crime. By creating a registry, we hope that we can combat a bunch of these problems. We'll know who's responsible for the properties and who to cite for violations, or also, as we've had from some banks, there's been such rapid turnover in the industry, a lot of banks don't even know what they own right now, and so this will be a great tool for them. And a lot of the banks have come together, actually, and created something I'll talk about in a second that should be very helpful for us as well. An additional problem is for renters in foreclosed properties who don't know where to pay the rent once the property becomes bank-owned. And we want to make sure that the bank continues to get the stream of money, which creates value for the property, and that the renters continue to abide by the law, pay that rent, and stay in those properties. So with that information at our fingertips, we can ensure foreclosed properties don't destabilize neighborhoods and that tenants don't accidentally miss a rental payment. So one of the issues I'd like to ask the CLA to explore is this system that the banks have set up, the Mortgage Electronic Registration System, or MERS. This came to my office's attention when we discussed this registry with Wells Fargo and Bank of America, who've been two good actors in this foreclosure crisis. And the system currently exists and may have some of the information already that we're looking for. So if we can piggyback or at least explore what connections we can make with that database, that would be great. And if this system is sufficient for our needs, that is, if it allows us to make sure that properties are up to code and the tenants know where to pay the rent, then perhaps we can look at setting up a system where banks can either register with that system or with ours. So we don't want to add bureaucracy to banks at a time when they don't have as much staff, they're in a tough place, but we do need that information. We understand that's what Virginia is doing. You can do the either or. So I'd ask the CLA to help in figuring out if the mortgage electronic registration system can be used as part of our framework in that report back in 90 days. And since Mr. Reyes was quoted today, I'll quote Mr. Labange, because what is it? Information is knowledge is power. And so with that,
Wow, that was
information,
heavy.
it's, yeah, Mr. Labange has some heavy quotes. So,
I'm
yeah.
going to have
One of those days.
to suck in this moment.
And with that information, hopefully we can empower our renters, our banks, and our owners as well as the communities who are hit by these foreclosures. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reyes. Did you want to get him back? Okay.
I got 4 years.
It'll come.
You know, there was old Gil Lindsay would tell a story about how sometimes he would get a little frustrated in the beginning when he couldn't obtain votes from members or what have you. And I remember talking to him, and he had his little cane, and he just said, "The world is round, and I just sit back with my cane, and when the opportunity comes, whack." So you better watch it, I guess is what I'm trying to
I
say.
have the deepest respect for Mr. Reyes.
Then without objection, we will adopt this motion. Hustle back to your chair.
Or continue it for 90 days, right?
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, for report back? Yeah.
So without objection, we'll continue it for 90 days with a report back. Ms. Barclay, is there any more business before this committee?
No, sir.
This committee's adjourned.
That's a committee meeting.
No,
That's a committee
no,
meeting.
and I hate to say it because I do love it, but that's because he was.